Good morning, LavaCon. Hello to the keepers of the content, to the masters of the multi-channel multiverse, these most literate of the corporate warriors. Good morning. We are going to talk about hacking the enterprise. The current state of our content in the enterprise, which is a mess. And the hope for the future, which all of us are influencing and working on every day. The good news is we can rest easy. It's a mess everywhere. Everyone seems to think that someone somewhere has it figured out. Wendy has made a lot of progress. And that's a really good, hopeful sign in this industry. But for the most part, there is suffering among our people. The biggest organizations in the world are facing huge problems with content. Friction is everywhere. No one can find any content, even if they're trying to just use content within their department in a new place. Discovering content is almost impossible. We're finding that the friction between all of the manufacturing processes was reduced many years ago by lean thinking. But within content, lean thinking has not yet been applied almost at all. Enterprise publishing uses outdated processes that rely entirely on manual content transformations for the most part. Those capabilities are essentially all depending on a human being. Any customer experience is depending on a human being taking some content from one place and putting it into many other places. This is a problem because there is an omnichannel content explosion happening, where each one of our products suddenly has multiple content assets with multiple variants that are being distributed in multiple languages out to multiple different segments of personalization. And we're being asked to do more and more of this to more channels and more devices. I'm Cruce Saunders. I'm a content engineer, and I love content intelligence. I work with which is simpleA.com, and we work with some of the largest and most complex content sets in the world with some of the most significantly sized organizations that are all struggling with similar issues. And over the last year, we've interviewed 100 executives that are managing content and many, many more in surveys. And what we find is that everybody knows that content growth is absolutely overwhelming. This is a real scenario. We have a product offer type. The offer type is being applied to bundles. This used to be no more than 25 content items in the past, and not just not the far past. This was just a few years ago. All of a sudden, this client is dealing with, for a single content type, 18,000 variants across verticals and channels and countries, and they live in multiple systems of record. Because in most places, one CMS does not contain all of the content. Many sources, many destinations. But the number one way that content moves around the enterprise is Microsoft Word via email. We are writing our content not into a CMS. It is time to get honest. Nobody writes content into a CMS. When we're creative and we have an idea and we're running out of the shower, we don't log into the VPN and open up the CMS and figure it out, right? We open up Word, right? So content is being created, and this is happening in every part of the organization, in Word and transiting via email and shared drives and sometimes GitHub. Publishing the old way is turning us into copy-paste robots. Everybody's worried about the robots taking over. I am not worried about the robots taking over, right? I'm worried about the computers turning us into robots because we're copying and pasting over and over. Every single event we interacts with the customer requires a new transformation of the content. Sadly, this means that writers are spending 50% or more of their time on the mechanics of content rather than the content itself. One of our clients, we benchmarked it at 90%. 90%. So our subject matter experts, our highly paid, really smart technical writers are all, and some would argue it's highly paid, but are all experiencing some level of massive friction in content portability, the basics of publishing. All content right now is tied to people or process or a silo or a platform. Content is not decoupled, it's not moving, it's not independent, it's not the knowledge brain out of which our organization creates experiences, it's stuck. The world is operating on what we would call brute force content management. There's a question as to whether or not we're omni-channel customer experience professionals or whether we are omni-channel copy and pasters. We're also building the same content topic in multiple ways and different times. And when you add variation, it starts to become a big mess. No single team is responsible for omni-channel content. Every team is responsible for creating customer experiences in their own silos. This is creating the need to have copy-paste farms. And they never are called that. There's always a fancy name. Digital enablement, content administration, the publishing capabilities team. One of our clients has upwards of 200 plus people in India. Another one has almost 400, which is our max. And so there are literally people whose sole job is to move content from one format into another, into multiple AEM instances, into multiple channels and variations. So there is also no shared semantics. We don't have a single layer or resource to understand taxonomy in our organizations or to personalize content by. So there's lots of ad hoc taxonomies being developed. All things are ending up in spreadsheets, and there might be, as Sarah was pointing out, 13 plus spreadsheets running around in one even publishing group. One with the product taxonomy, one with the customer segment. Everybody's got a taxonomy. So, and content teams just can't scale fast enough to keep up with what needs to be done. We don't have time, they say, to do basic QA, let alone tagging. So now you want me to get multi-channel on this content set? I can't even, I can't, right? So everybody's feeling that pain. But the reality is products are all now information products. When we experience any product, we're experiencing the information of that product. We're generating information, it's generating information back to us. No product is by itself a monolithic thing anymore. But organizations still treat content like it's a second-class citizen, third, fourth, fifth sometimes, where it's the last thing people think about. But content really is at the epicenter. It is the center of the experience. In some cases, it's really what differentiates our companies from one company to the next, is the content experience. Tools misuse is creating another set of silos. We have a lot of people using communication tools, even things like Slack or Jira, as content repositories, ad hoc content repositories. So we have the formal content repositories, and then we have the accidental content repositories. And all of those have versions in them, and all of those versions are subject to being part of the customer experience, but they're probably buried and nobody can find them. Everybody needs and wants, not everybody wants, governance, but that word is filled with mystery and fear, and it's mostly ignored. We need to really change what governance means. We really need to use new words to describe it, because what we're talking about is basically standards and orchestration. We're facing massive technical debt inside of our organizations, massive. Our content systems are out of date, and our content sets are out of date. So we've got content debt and system technical debt all over. So we need to radically update all of this stuff and move towards a new supply chain, a new way of working with content. The nature of content is moving from static to dynamic, from 2D to 3D, from being a static block of cement to being electricity that moves and powers our customer experiences. But our environments today often look something like this. Products all have different segment owners, and each of those segment owners are producing content. Agencies of record are all producing content. In-countries are all producing content. And there's a review life cycle for legal and governance. And all of that is manual. There is no actual supply chain connecting any of the parts besides email, sometimes Jira, sometimes a CMS workflow for a portion of it. So parts of it move quickly, and then it gets stuck, right? And lots of points of getting stuck. So to enable the delivery, we need personalized experiences, and all of us, by the way, are moving towards personalized experiences. If you're not explicitly already, we are going to be moving there because the nature of commerce is becoming conversational. Everything is a conversation. Every part of the support lifecycle, every part of the sales lifecycle, it's a conversation with the customer. We no longer publish and throw stuff over the wall. We're in a conversation with our customer. So all of us are moving towards personalized content. We need to enrich it faster, manage it better, transform it. We need to move from a high-end bistro restaurant to something more like a P.F. Chang's. Can you imagine if somebody like a P.F. Chang's were to try to scale their operation but handle everything like this high-end restaurant we went to in Silicon Valley, Adega? They knew the pedigree of every chicken that went through there. They can tell you all about every ingredient, which was hand-grown in their own farm, and the chef makes all of the decisions. This is how we're doing our content. But we really need a common set of ingredients. We need common content elements. We need to be able to scale our operations so we can operate more like a P.F. Chang's at scale. This is the same thing with mass food production. In 1911, something came along called the combine harvester, and the combine harvester allowed basically something to happen in 6 minutes that used to take 25 people a full day. We need this kind of thing in content. We can't assume we're going to feed the masses and do food production at scale if we're all running small single-family farms in a lot of separate silos and trying to create a common customer experience out of it, right? It just doesn't, it's a disconnect. We're still operating an old model way of thinking while all of the rest of the world is moving and applying lean manufacturing principles to every other part of supply chains. And we're willing to invest millions of dollars in product supply chains. But how much is being invested in content supply chains, really? And if we want personalization at scale, we can't just assume it's going to come out of one technology purchase or one change to our process or one anything. It's a combination of people, process, and technology to move from this one-off page design to this world of fluid experiences that are assembled using modular content. That is the key word, assembled. We are no longer publishing, we are assembling experiences out to a customer's unique context. That requires looking at content with a new life cycle, with an understanding of how we plan, author, and manage the content, but what our content is doing along every stage of that. Whether it's in one stage we're optimizing for context, for author experience, for management, for delivery. We need to decouple our content from our systems, our schemas from our systems, our semantics from our systems. These things shouldn't live in one system of record, in one taxonomy place, or in one. We need to be able to share these among the organization to create coherence within our content sets so that we can ultimately take different kinds of elements like titles and have them appear in all of these places, and our descriptions and our prices and our offers or any other element that describes the customer experience. They have to adapt intelligently. They need to be able to machine. We need to be able to code interactions with our content sets because they're modular and they're able to flow through channels and experiences. I'd like to introduce the temple of content intelligence. It starts with the customer. The customer is the objective. None of us are in the business to do anything other than serve that customer. And the customer has a context, a set of information they're telling us through their behavior. That context is very rich in data. We have that data. All of us have a database. Almost everybody calls it Customer 360. I don't know why. But there is a database of the customer data, our CDP. That CDP, or Customer Data Platform, interacts with our content and creates customer experiences. But how do we do that? We base it on a platform of strategy informed by standards, delivered into systems, that is entirely held up by the two pillars of structure and semantics. The entire edifice of our temple depends upon structure and semantics. The whole thing falls down without commonality with structure and semantics. We need to be able to align those into our systems of record, into our software, our CMS, our DAM, all of the places we keep content. They all need to be informed by a common understanding of systems and of structure and semantics, and then delivered via a services layer. That services layer is a content API. It connects us out to each of the different renditions of our content, that it connects out to various parts of our experience ecosystem. That is how we get to the customer with this trinity of customer, context, and content. The content intelligence framework that A has developed with our master architect, Joe Gallner, who is a longtime LavaCon speaker and whose spirit lives here. We have a connection between the people, process, and technology. So strategy, structure, semantic systems, standards, software, and services align to changes in people, process, and technology. It doesn't happen in a single effort, in a single place. It happens by being able to invest in layers of change, a transformation truly, over time. It's time for us to look at how that happens. It happens bottom up, it happens top down. It is the two that create change, the ability for there to be a groundswell of effort and understanding of what needs to change from everybody doing the work, and we need to be able to get the CEO, CMO, CFO involved. So let's hack the enterprise. How do we work towards this big shift? Well, the big shift is going to happen when the actual content itself moves from the P&L statement to being on the balance sheet. That will happen because it is valuable intellectual property, intangible intellectual property, like a movie right or something else that is already on the balance sheet in some corporations. But our content, which is the wrapper around all of our products, which is the customer experience, which is our competitive advantage, will be on the balance sheet eventually. And the CEO and the CFO will capitalize their businesses and their market value on the basis of content. So guess what? The people in this room are going to start to become some of the most important people in the enterprise. Enterprises just don't know it yet, okay? Because there's a lot of skills here that don't exist anywhere else. But that's not going to happen soon. So what can we do now? What can we do right now? Start a content club, okay? So we need to just put some words around the problem, describe it, brainstorm together, learn together from webinars and articles and books, quantify metrics around content. These are all things we can do right now by starting a conversation around lunch. Hey, I'm just going to show up at a certain time, at a certain place in the cafeteria. Does anybody want to talk? Build a bigger conversation. Inside organizations, there's other people trying to solve this problem around. It's not just TechComs. There are people in marcomm suffering. There are people in localization. Localization teams are dealing with a lot of this, and they hate being left out of the conversation so early in the game. We really need to find those places where the conversation's happening and begin to link it together, link those conversations together. Start to quantify the problem. We need to understand what our content does for the organization. Can we quantify what it does, what work it performs? Our content is a worker in the world. What work is that content doing? And then we need to understand the cost it takes to create that content. And we need to understand the cost to transform it and to publish it, and just start jotting those numbers down, because those will be very valuable for the conversations ahead. We need to learn the practices within this industry. We are not writers. Writers are valuable, wonderful parts of creating experiences, but we are using writing as a part of a strategy. What is content strategy? And all of it is aimed at reducing customer effort, reducing the amount of effort it takes for a customer to work with our organization, which increases the velocity of the transactions in our organization. All of content engineering is about reducing internal effort. All of the effort inside of the business that it takes to manage content as it gets out the door. We should look deeply at our workflows. What kind of things are we doing to actually manage content in each of the places? And can we start to write that down? Author context really matters. We need to give our authors cues for creating good experiences based on metadata that's coming from a common source. We need to find ways to streamline content workflows. And we might have ideas about that. We can put those down on paper. We can hack together some starting content diagrams, right? There are so many good resources on content modeling out there. We do a kind of content modeling that is pretty extreme, but content modeling is a way of understanding content types, their relationships, their attributes, and how those turn into collections and views out to the world, or experiences. All of that needs to come from a source. We might as well start jotting it down based on what we see around us. And you know, we can begin to work towards gaining buy-in one step at a time, one conversation at a time, making little bits of processes less cumbersome than they are today, and measuring the progress in real terms. We can share and organize semantics. If there's a spreadsheet out there and you know somebody else has a spreadsheet, say, well, what if we were to put those together and put it up on a shared drive and look at that in one, and make those tabs in one spreadsheet instead of, you know, and then what if we were to start sharing terms and talk about it once in a while? Just that kind of thing makes a big difference. And then it does make sense to start the inventories, right? The understanding the expressions and renderings of content, where those are. What are our customer experiences and journeys? What are the exemplars of our content? How does content actually manifest itself? There's a white paper, that's an exemplar. There's an email campaign, that's something. There's something our CSRs see up on their screen. That's another permutation of our knowledge. We're creating a brain. We're creating an enterprise brain that expresses itself in all of these places. Ultimately, it'll be a graph, but that's another conversation. Build bridges. Bridge builders are the new power brokers. If we want power inside of our organizations, we need to start connecting the dots. If we're building a brain, we need to understand how to connect the nodes of that brain. In a human organization, the nodes are people. People and silos or groups, working teams. Connecting those dots makes you a power broker. It is time for TechComs to rise up. Technical communicators have the knowledge needed for all of this. We understand the structure and the taxonomy and the workflows around content. We've got ideas around and mental models that other people actually do not have to understand content. That's exciting, right? That's very useful. Marketing wants to catch up. They're working on it. Some of them are investing in a big way. We get hired by marketing more than we get hired by TechComm, actually. So they're trying, and we introduce the TechComm team a lot. But the TechComs is still way ahead, and we need to use that in our advocacy within the organization. If we think that we're creating documentation, we're not. We're generating an onboarding and training experiences from knowledge sets. Those onboarding and training experiences are leading directly to customer retention. So we're not doing documentation. We're doing onboarding and training and customer retention. We're crafting experiences. The objective is never the document, the help article. It's a customer experience that represents in a journey, in a conversation. We're not doing marketing. We're personalizing the value of every organization. We're not doing customer support. We're crafting just-in-time customer experiences, expressing our fundamental products and services. So let's rise. Let's form a movement. Let's lead the intelligence revolution. There is a whole world of content inside of an enterprise, and it needs to be connected. It needs to be unified. Our systems need to be unified against master models, and we need to be able to create out of many one, e pluribus unum. Thanks everybody for your time.